When the war on Adamantua ended with the defeat of the Imperium's forces, a ferocious political storm was brewing within the High Lord's conclave on Terra, the heart of the Imperium of Man. Every lord clung to their military power, while shirking responsibility at every turn. Amid this rot, two rare voices in Terra's bureaucratic machine dared to prioritize the crisis. Margaret Wayland, representative of the Inquisition, and Drakan Vangarich, Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum. Forging an uneasy alliance, they used blackmail, coercion, and strategic maneuvering to force High Lord Admiral Namsong, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Navy and holder of immense fleet power, to dispatch the elite solar fleet to Sanctuary Port, tasked with repelling the orc hordes massing there. Sanctuary Port, a naval base perched on the edge of Terra's core systems, was no mere outpost. Its sprawling shipyards churned out warships that sustained the Imperium's grip on the sector, making it a strategic linchpin. Losing it would leave Terra's outer defenses in tatters. By the time the solar fleet arrived, the port was already trapped in a vice and orc battle moon. A colossal artificial satellite bristling with weapons loomed overhead, flanked by swarms of greenskin vessels that choked the void. The initial engagement was a bloodbath. The battle moon's gravity weapons tore through Imperial cruisers like paper, reducing entire ships to drifting debris and leaving thousands of sailors dead or adrift in the cold of space. But in the wreckage, the Imperium uncovered a fatal flaw every time the battle moon fired its gravity cannons. Its primary defense system, the void shields, flickered and weakened, leaving the core vulnerable. Worse for the orcs, their inherent WAAGH fervor had unraveled their formation. Eager to chase down fleeing Imperial ships, the Greenskin fleet had scattered across the system, abandoning their tight blockade. This was the opening the battered solar fleet needed. As the battle moon unleashed another gravity blast, Admiral Namsong ordered a suicide charge. Imperial battleships, torpedo boats, and small attack craft surged forward, their cannons blazing as they rammed through the weakened shields. The assault targeted the battle moon's gravity generator, a massive core that stabilized the artificial satellite structure. With a cataclysmic explosion, the generator imploded, triggering a chain reaction that tore the battle moon apart from the inside out. The blast consumed dozens of Imperial ships that couldn't retreat in time, but the orc menace at Sanctuary Port was shattered. Admiral Namsong returned to Terra triumphant, staging a grand victory parade to bolster his political standing. But the Greenskin will AAGH was far from over. As celebrations echoed through Terra's hive cities, a second battle moon materialized directly above the throne world, its shadow casting a pall of dread over the capital. The solar fleet was decimated, its ranks depleted by the Sanctuary Port campaign. The Imperial Fists, Terra's vaunted Astartes defenders, had been annihilated on Adamantua, and the Adeptus Mechanicus on Mars, jealous of their autonomy, flatly refused to send reinforcements. Terra was defenseless, its gates wide open to the orc horde. Yet the orcs did not attack. They hovered overhead, their warships idling as they watched the Humies scurry in panic below. The sight of the battle moon plunged Terra into chaos. Uncontrollable fear gripped every citizen. Riots erupted in the hives as mobs looted and destroyed in the face of impending doom. The Adeptus Arbites fought desperately to maintain order, but the riot shields and shock batons were no match for the existential terror of an orc invasion. For many, a single glance at the moon in the sky was enough to shatter their sanity. Just as Terra's collective will was about to break, another High Lord stepped forward, Yurskin Nartur, representative of the merchant fleet. With the Imperial Navy's power in tatters, its influence in the conclave waning, the merchant fleet saw a chance to seize control. Nartur allied with Erican Meslin, High Lord of the Ecclesiarchy, the Imperium's state religion, and together they launched a campaign of incendiary rhetoric. They blamed the Navy for the crisis, denouncing Namsong's hollow victory at Sanctuary Port, and rallied the terrified populace with calls for a holy war against the Orc Moon. Their speeches stoked extreme religious fervor, framing the conflict as a test of faith in the Emperor. The result was a ragtag crusade army, millions of civilian volunteers, bolstered by a handful of Arbites and Astra Militarum troops, boarding repurposed cargo ships, passenger liners, and even small pleasure craft. It was a suicidal mission. Orc cannons and gravity weapons tore through the unarmored civilian vessels, turning the void into a graveyard. But sheer numbers prevailed. Millions of Crusaders managed to land on the battle moon's surface, their zealotry fueling their advance. The Astra Militarum even deployed over 100 Lehman Rust tanks and Chimera transports, dropping them onto the moon's rocky terrain. For a brief moment, the Crusaders held their ground, overwhelming orc boys with sheer force of numbers. But the orcs had a brutal counter. They manipulated the battle moon's tectonic plates, shifting two massive mountain ranges to crush the landing zone. Millions of Crusaders were flattened in an instant, only a handful were captured alive. The Holy War was a catastrophic failure. After the Crusades' defeat, the orcs sent 3 diplomats to Terra's imperial palace. The lead greenskin ambassador, speaking fluent Gothic, an unexpected display of sophistication, demanded the Imperium's unconditional surrender. "Submit or burn," he growled to the High Lords, who stood frozen in their gilded hall. Unaccustomed to negotiating with Xenos filth, the lords stumbled over their words, their cowardice laid bare. Disgusted, the ambassador gave them an ultimatum: decide by dawn, or face annihilation. As Terra descended into further chaos, a mysterious squad of eldar harlequins infiltrated the imperial palace. They fought their way past the Lucifer Blackguard elite palace troops and reached the Eternity Gate, only to be halted by the Custodes, the Emperor's personal bodyguards. The Custodes cut down all but one harlequin, who was captured by the Inquisition and representatives of the Officio Assassinorum. It was clear Terra's government was teetering on the brink of collapse, with shadowy forces clashing in the light and dark. Behind the scenes, a terrifying truth emerged. Not only was the orc war boss, the Beast, rising, but a hidden dagger. An unknown threat within the High Lord's conclave was also closing in. Just as all hope seemed lost, the final wall fleet assembled by the Sons of Dorn arrived in the Sol system. Their journey from the Far system had been a brutal one, fighting through greenskin WAAAGH, swarms that spanned the galaxy. When they reached Terra, only 2 800 Astartes remained, supported by 20 battle barges and strike cruisers. The fleet was a coalition of 4 chapters: the Dark Templars, Crimson Fists, Black Templars, and Exemplars of Dorn. Leading them was Captain Kurland, the last surviving officer of the Imperial Fists. Upon their arrival, Kurland immediately devised a plan to destroy the orc battle moon. Leveraging the might of his Astartes, he forced Fabricator General Kubrick of Mars, the only High Lord with remaining military assets, to provide support. A joint fleet of Astartes and Adeptus Mechanicus ships launched an assault on the battle moon. As the orcs fired their gravity weapons at the Imperial fleet, Kurland's forces launched a boarding action. Terminators, Astartes clad in heavy, nearly impenetrable armor, stormed the battle moon's surface, cutting through orc defenders as they raced toward the core, a massive warp gate that was summoning more greenskin reinforcements. Just as the Imperial fleet was on the verge of being destroyed by the battle moon's gravity cannons, the Iron Knights, another successor, chapter of the Imperial Fists, answered Kurland's call, their ships arriving to turn the tide. Together, the combined forces disabled the warp gate and inflicted over 60% damage to the battle moon. Though the artificial satellite wasn't fully destroyed, the immediate threat to Terra was lifted. The Imperial fleet, badly damaged, retreated to lick its wounds. Back on Terra, as celebrations resumed, Kurland and the Final Wall's commanders met with Lord Udin Matet Udo, the senior member of the High Lord's conclave and self-proclaimed Lord Guilliman's proxy. Udo erupted in anger, denouncing Kurland for forming a rogue coalition and demanding the Final Wall disband. To appease his allies in the Adeptus Mechanicus, he also ordered a halt to all attacks on the damaged battle moon. The Mechanicus, it turned out, had been secretly studying orc technology since the start of the Beast Wars. They had reverse-engineered the Greenskins' warp teleportation tech, crude but powerful, and planned to use the damaged battle moon to perfect it. Their goal: abandon Terra and teleport Mars to a distant corner of the galaxy, leaving the rest of the Imperium to its fate. The High Lord's conclave was a rotting husk, clinging to power as the Imperium crumbled around it. The only question was, who would ignite the fire of reform? For Kurland witness to the High Lord's corruption, cowardice, and self-serving politics, the answer was clear. With the support of the Inquisition, Officio Assassinorum, Adeptus Arbites, and his fellow Astartes, Kurland launched a coup. He stripped Lord Udo of his command and declared himself the new Imperial War Master. Faced with the threat of 4 Astartes chapters, the other High Lords had no choice but to submit. Kurland's first act as War Master was to send an Astartes task force to Mars, pressuring Fabricator General Kubrick into abandoning his betrayal. After a brief but intense skirmish, Kubrick relented, sharing the Mechanicus' research on orc technology. The data revealed a chilling truth. The Beast, leader of the Greenskin WAAGH, had originated on Ulanor, a desolate world that was once the site of the Great Crusade's triumph, where Horus Lupercal was crowned War Master over a millennium earlier. Now, it was the birthplace of humanity's greatest threat. To end the Greenskin menace, Kurland issued a galaxy-spanning call to arms. All loyal servants of the Emperor were to rally at Terra, forming a massive expeditionary force to invade Ullanor and destroy the beast. But as the preparations began, Inquisitor Veritas revealed a shocking secret to crewman Vulcan. The Primarch of the Salamanders, thought lost for over 1,000 years, had returned. The Primarch was on Cadillus, a death world, fighting a lonely war against the orks. The revelation was tied to the captured Harlequin, Lariel Ray. Interrogated by Vengerich, Veritas, and Wayland, Lariel revealed she had been sent by Eldrad Ulthrin, Farseer of Crathworld Ulthway, to meet the Emperor. Despite the Harlequin's brutal assault on the palace, which had killed dozens of custodes, Lariel insisted she came in peace. She brought a message. Eldrad and his retinue had calmed the warp storms unleashed by the Ork, WAAAGH, allowing the final wall fleet to reach Terra. The Ork threat would pass, she warned, but the original destroyer, a cryptic reference to a greater cosmic evil, loomed. Humanity and the Eldar must ally to survive. To prove her sincerity, Lariel presented a relic, a tooth of Nocturne's lava dragons, a gift from Vulcan to Eldrad during the horusheresy. The relic triggered a flood of memories in Veritas. Memories of his time as a preacher in the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet, when he had witnessed Vulcan's compassion firsthand. With the Inquisition, Officio Assassinorum, and Astartes united, Kurland's reform of the Imperium had begun. The High Lord's corruption was being purged, the Mechanicus brought to heel, and a united front forged against the orks. But the galaxy was still teetering on the edge of destruction. As the expeditionary force prepared to sail for Ullanor and rumors of Vulcan's return spread, one truth remained: the Imperium's survival depended not on corrupt lords, but on the courage of its Astartes, the cunning of its inquisitors, and the hope of allies, even unlikely ones. The beast's what AAG was a crisis like no other, but it had also become a catalyst for change. For the first time in centuries, the Imperium was united by a common purpose. And as Kurland looked toward Ullanor, he knew the war ahead would be brutal, but the Imperium would fight for Terra, for the Emperor, and for the survival of humanity.